Reaction to the is one very important thing. While they try to shut us down, the sad thing is, and the reason why we're here against discrimination, is that this year we celebrate the 180th anniversary of Quebec emancipating all minorities.
Yay!
It's 100, yes, yay! 100 years ago, c'était Louis-Joseph Papineau, 180 ans passés, qui a émancipé chaque minorité à Québec 20 ans avant l'Angleterre. Et 180 ans après cette émancipation, nous avons un gouvernement qui veut diminuer, qui envoie les messages de nullification, qui envoie les métaphores de ségrégation. That is the shame of today. That is why we come together. Not only as Canadians, but as Quebecers, because we will not stand for the destruction of a political patrimony. It is also a shame that these people are so scared of ideas that they will not listen to anybody else's ideas. That is not the Quebec that Louis LaFontaine made responsible government for in 1848. The first responsible government in the British Empire. That is not the Quebec, where Wilfrid Laurier in 1905 said, "Je suis très fier d'une chose dans ma vie politique, que j'étais excommuniqué par les prêtres catholiques et condamné par les prêtres protestants." That is not the Quebec of Pierre Elliott Trudeau, who understood that the universal rights of man has to be dans une constitution. Because you do not get freedom. And you have people who are too scared to listen to the other side. There cannot be, under this government, two classes of citizenship. That will not stand. You cannot have... You cannot have, let them scream. You know, Dr. Martin Luther King said that unearned suffering is redemptive. Well, the only thing redemptive about the unearned suffering of 1.5 million Quebec citizens over 40 years of la guerre des grands mensonges culturels is that we will not be silenced and we are still here. J'y suis, j'y reste. They have to understand that. And all political parties have to understand that. That when political parties and when political leaders of all parties open their mouths and succumb to laws that are unjust, when they diminish the dignity and decency of 1.5 million citizens, they open the door to the worst and the lowest common denominators of society. And that's what we're seeing. People who are afraid of free speech would stop at nothing to blame others for their own failures. It will not stop at language. This is not about language. What we have today in this jurisdiction is a government that has said that they are going to count heads on Montreal Island to see who's French and who's English. This is a government who has said that if you do not meet their criteria, you do not stand for political office. This is a society that just 8 months ago, and I'm ashamed to say it, it was under the Liberal Party, tried to have a law passed to accredit journalists and make them pass the language test. We will not stand for that, because you cannot marginalize a people and think that they will remain silent. We are not going anywhere. Here, here.
Yay!
And we are not going anywhere. Not only because we want our rights, but because we make a call on Ottawa and we make a call in this country that a nation that was supposed to be a light unto the world, that to show that people of different cultures and different languages can live together. Yes. That dream shall never die, no matter how much suffering we have to go through.
Never die! Never die!
Never die.
Never die! Vive Canada!
Il y a beaucoup de gens qui disent que dans une démocratie, chaque citoyen doit accepter la décision de population, et c'est vrai. Et nous avons accepté que nous avons un gouvernement. Mais n'oubliez pas jamais que la pluralité de ce gouvernement péquiste, c'est le plus bas dans l'histoire. pas seulement pour les péquistes, mais c'est le plus bas vote de aucun gouvernement dans l'histoire du Québec. They have no mandate to reduce 20% of Quebecers to second-class citizenship. They have no mandate to stop Francophone parents from giving their children the maximum opportunities of life. They have no mandate to tell people what language we'll speak in our workplace and in our bedrooms. They have no mandate to tell 20% of the population that contributes 40% of the individual tax revenue that you will pay, but you will have no say. We say, no say, no pay. There is not much difference between societies that diminish the citizenship of their people by race or color or creed or religion, and those societies that would impose a second-class citizenship on people because of the language they choose to speak in a nation that is bilingual. We are Canadians first. This province has not voted against a forced separation. Let us never forget, and let us constantly remind this government in Quebec City that two-thirds of Quebecers voted for federalist free market option. They did not vote to separate. They did not vote to exclude. They did not vote for what Jean-Paul Sartre called la politique d'exclusivité et intolerance. They voted for Quebec to be a part of a nation that can be a light unto the world, because no founding culture has a moral superiority. It is something that Pierre Elliott Trudeau, whether you agree with all his policies or not, tried to teach, that there is no moral superiority on the part of Francophones who came here for the economic dreams of an imperial king, and for Anglophones who came here for the colonial dreams of an English king. But there is a possibility for change, that when we put all that aside, and when we understand that we have built potentially, probably, the most compassionate, the most inclusive, the most caring nation in the world, that is not to be sacrificed on the altar of political expediency by a political party that will, for the sake of votes, appeal to the lowest common denominator. And when political leaders open their mouths and they talk about counting heads, and they talk about reducing access to education and reducing access to opportunity, and when you have a government that seeks to demonize and marginalize and wins an election on messages of nullification, on metaphors of segregation, they have a responsibility for causing the worst of us, the most frustrated of us, to beat up a teenage kid in St. Leonard. They have a responsibility for the ticket takers that get a customer into a headlock. They have a responsibility for a paramedic that will not speak English when he sees a 2-year-old girl riding. And the reason they are not isolated cases is because the government in Quebec City has opened the door to the forces of darkness. This is not to say that the majority of Francophones accept that. The majority of Francophones reject the politics of division and discord. But the responsibility rests on the shoulders of political leaders that have been elected, who don't know the difference between civilized debate and absolute discrimination. And it is time to put an end to this. And if there's one thing that all of us can do from here, and do not, by the way, do not ever be despondent about comparison of numbers, because it's not about numbers, it's about passion. Each one of you with passion and dedication is worth 1,000 others who will bang their pots in the streets of Montreal. It is about the fact that we are somebody, and no government that calls itself democratic can ignore the fact that we are somebody. When we leave here today, we don't talk about whether there were several hundred people here or several thousand. We talk about the fact that we are now a family, that we are now going out and each one of us getting 100 more people, so that the next time we gather, after the next destructive event, after the next act of discrimination, after the next act of nulliposition, that they have committed a sin against not only Canada, but against Quebec. And I leave you with the words of an American civil libertarian, Justice William Douglas, who once said, the manner in which a nation and a government treats the least of the society, treats the smallest minority, that is the litmus test whether that government has a right for a seat at the table of civilized societies. And this government in Quebec City, and if there's one message we have to send to Madame Marois, que la décision si Québec sera une société civilisée n'est pas déjà déterminée. Et c'est dans les mains de Madame Marois et de Monsieur Lisée et Monsieur Belleville de faire cette détermination. And I must say to my liberal friends, and they are my liberal friends, that in this coming race that they're having for leadership, it is time to put an end to 40 years of les grands mensonges des guerres culturelles. It is time to put an end to 40 years of the great lies of the culture wars. Whichever leader is elected must stand up and say, we are liberals not just with an L majuscule, but with an L minuscule, that we believe in the liberalism of Spinoza and Locke, and Rousseau and Voltaire, and Jefferson, and yes, nous sommes fidèles à la libéralisme de Papineau, et de La Fontaine, et de Cartier, et de Laurier, et de Trudeau, and this discrimination will not stand, because we will have a civil rights movement in this province as strong as anything that was ever seen in the American South. The time to end it is now. I was just given a Canadian pin. And yes, we are Canadians, but we are also Quebecers. As Gilles Vigneault said, mon pays, c'est pas un pays, c'est l'hiver. I say, mon pays, c'est pas un pays, c'est la terre. And for those of us who have relatives buried in the ground of Quebec, we say, j'y suis, j'y reste, and we will make Quebec free again once more. Thank you.